Take your men and leave this valley before the sun sets tomorrow. If you return, it will be war. You must leave this land before the sun sets tomorrow. This is my final word.
Marry my daughter,
We
or
both
walk away.
carry it.
The Apache chief's voice carried no anger as he stood before the gathered families, yet every face turned toward the cowboy waiting for an answer.
Just ours anymore.
Beside the chief stood a young woman nobody stepped near unless duty required it, her eyes lowered while whispers moved through the crowd like dry leaves across a trail. The cowboy had come seeking grazing rights for his struggling ranch, and everyone believed they already knew what choice he would make. Then he lifted his head, looked directly at her instead of her father, and the silence became heavier than anyone expected. Most men standing there believed the choice was simple because they thought they understood the girl, and they thought they understood the cowboy. The girl had spent years carrying a reputation she never created, while the cowboy carried losses that few people in the territory knew about. Yet neither reputation told the truth, and neither story explained why Chief Nantan had spoken those words in front of everyone instead of behind closed doors. The chief was respected for speaking carefully, which made his public demand feel even stranger. Some believed he was testing the cowboy's character. Others thought he was trying to rid himself of a daughter nobody wanted. A few wondered whether an older promise, buried beneath years of silence, had finally returned demanding to be honored. Whatever the reason, every person present sensed that something important stood hidden beneath the moment. Daniel Carter could have turned around and ridden home within minutes. Nobody would have blamed him. The ranch he fought to keep alive needed land, money, and time more than it needed complications. Yet something about the woman beside the chief refused to leave his thoughts, because while everyone else looked at her as though she carried a problem, she stood with the quiet patience of someone carrying a truth. Before that day ended, an answer would be given. Before the following season arrived, long-buried secrets would rise into the open. And before anyone in that territory understood what had happened, the woman many dismissed would change the lives of nearly everyone around her. And the story began years before the chief spoke those unforgettable words. The town of Red Valley sat between rolling grassland and rocky hills where nearly every resident knew not only their neighbors' names but also their histories. News traveled faster than wagons, and opinions often arrived before facts. People worked hard, attended the same gatherings, and remembered events long after they should have been forgotten. Because of that, a reputation could become stronger than the truth itself, and one particular reputation had followed Elana for years, hadn't it? Daniel Carter lived several miles outside town on a ranch that had once belonged to his father. His broad shoulders carried years of labor, while his weathered hands reflected fences repaired, cattle gathered, and winters survived. 5 years earlier he had buried both parents within the same season, and since then he had spoken little about loneliness, choosing instead to work longer hours whenever silence followed him home. Yet beneath that steady routine remained a hope he rarely admitted even to himself, didn't there? Elana spent much of her time helping elders, tending gardens, and teaching younger children skills passed through generations. She rarely defended herself against gossip because she understood that arguments seldom changed minds. Years earlier, after a sickness took her mother, several unfortunate events happened around the same time, and some people began calling her unlucky. The label survived long after reason disappeared, but why did she continue carrying it without complaint? Chief Nantan watched all of it with growing concern because he knew his daughter deserved better than whispers. He also knew something few others remembered about the Carter family and a promise made many years before. While most people saw two separate lives moving along different paths, the chief saw a road slowly drawing together. Whenever doubt troubled him, he remembered his late friend's words, "Some things are worth more once you've almost lost them." Everything changed when a harsh summer left grazing land thinner than expected. Ranchers throughout the region searched for new places to move cattle, and Daniel soon realized his ranch would struggle through winter without additional pasture. The nearest available land bordered Apache territory overseen by Chief Nantan, which meant a meeting had to be arranged. What began as a practical concern soon became something far larger. 2 weeks later Daniel rode toward the Apache settlement. As he approached, he noticed several families gathered near the council area, their attention focused on someone standing beside the chief. When he arrived, Elana stepped forward carrying records of water sources and grazing routes that had been carefully maintained for years. Her calm voice explained details clearly while others listened, and Daniel found himself wondering why nobody in town ever spoke about this side of her. After the meeting ended, Daniel remained behind while others drifted away. "You keep those records yourself?" he asked. Elana nodded and gathered the papers carefully before answering. "Someone should." The simplicity of the reply lingered longer than expected, because it carried neither pride nor complaint, only responsibility. Several visits followed over the next month as grazing arrangements were discussed. During each meeting Daniel learned something new. Elana remembered details others forgot, solved problems before they became arguments, and treated every person with the same patience whether they respected her or not. Meanwhile, people around them began noticing how often the cowboy stayed longer than necessary. Then one evening Chief Nantan requested a private conversation, and the future quietly shifted beneath everyone's feet. When Daniel entered the chief's lodge the following morning, he expected to discuss land. Instead, Chief Nantan looked directly at him and said, "Marry my daughter, or walk away." And for the first time in many years, Daniel Carter had no immediate answer. Daniel remained silent for several moments after hearing the chief's words. Instead of answering, he asked the question nobody else seemed willing to ask. "What does Elana want?" Chief Nantan leaned back and studied him carefully before saying that he would not decide for his daughter. The proposal had been offered because of an old promise, but the choice belonged to both of them. That afternoon Daniel found Elana near the gardens and told her what her father had said. Rather than appearing surprised, she simply looked down at the soil in her hands and admitted that she had known this conversation might come one day. For the first time, Daniel realized there was a larger story hidden beneath the proposal. 2 days later Chief Nantan opened an old wooden chest that had belonged to Elana's mother. Inside lay several letters protected from weather and time. One of them carried the handwriting of Daniel's father. Years earlier, before either Daniel or Elana had reached adulthood, the two men had survived a winter storm together while driving cattle through dangerous country. During those difficult weeks they formed a friendship that neither forgot. In one letter Daniel's father wrote that if their children ever needed each other, they should never allow pride or rumor to stand in the way. The first piece of truth had surfaced, and it immediately made old assumptions seem smaller. As word spread through Red Valley, people began discussing the letters. Some who had always repeated stories about Elana now found themselves uncertain. Others remembered details they had ignored for years. An elderly woman recalled that whenever sickness or hardship struck a family, Elana was often among the first to help. A ranch hand remembered her staying through an entire night to care for an injured child. Piece by piece, the reputation people had accepted without question began to crack under the weight of ordinary facts. The loud certainty that once filled conversations slowly disappeared. The deeper truth emerged a week later when an elderly trader arrived from another territory and recognized Elana immediately. He remembered her mother and revealed something many had forgotten. Years ago, during the sickness that damaged Elana's reputation, her mother had spent her final weeks caring for infected families. Elana had assisted her despite being only a young girl. The tragedies people connected to bad luck had actually grown from acts of service and sacrifice. Standing before a gathering crowd, the trader shook his head and said quietly, "You blamed the wrong thing." No one argued. By the following evening nearly everyone understood what had happened. The stories that had followed Elana for years had survived only because nobody challenged them. As the crowd dispersed, Daniel stepped beside her and looked toward the people leaving. "You carried all that alone?" he asked. Elana answered with a small shrug. "Someone had to." The words settled over the moment with more force than any speech. Nearby, several former doubters lowered their eyes and quietly moved away. The final confirmation came when the town doctor publicly supported the trader's account and produced records from years earlier. He explained that Elana and her mother had helped save lives during the outbreak despite the risks. The doctor then looked around the crowd and said, "Red Valley owes her thanks." No applause followed because the moment felt too important for noise. As Daniel watched Elana stand quietly through the recognition she had never asked for, he understood something for the first time: real worth often remains hidden until someone chooses to see it. 3 months later, Red Valley looked different in ways that could not be measured on a map. Daniel and Elana were married in a small ceremony attended by ranchers, Apache families, and neighbors who once kept their distance. The ranch had gained the grazing agreement it needed, but more importantly it had become a place where people gathered freely. Children played near the barn, elders visited the porch, and shared meals often lasted longer than planned. Something that had once felt divided now felt connected. One afternoon a store owner who had once repeated rumors about Elana arrived with supplies for the ranch. He lingered awkwardly before admitting that he wished he had listened more carefully years earlier. Elana accepted the apology without making him uncomfortable, and the man left carrying less weight than when he arrived. The change in Red Valley did not come from arguments being won. It came from people finally seeing clearly. That evening Daniel and Elana sat together on the porch as the last light settled across the land. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. Daniel smiled and shook his head. "Not one." She nodded. "Good." In that quiet moment he remembered the old wisdom Chief Nantan had carried for years: some things are worth more once you've almost lost them. At last, he understood exactly what it meant. A little later Daniel remained on the porch while evening settled over the ranch. The home his parents left behind no longer felt empty, and the future no longer felt uncertain. Beyond the fences stretched familiar land, but everything seemed different because he now shared it with someone whose value had been there all along, waiting to be recognized. Daniel Carter did not become known for wealth, status, or cleverness. He became remembered for the simple courage to see value where others saw only rumor. When many people accepted easy stories, he chose to look deeper. When others walked away, he stayed long enough to learn the truth. If you were in Daniel's place, would you have accepted the chief's challenge and taken the time to know Elana, or would you have chosen the safer path and ridden away? Write your answer in the comments below. Sometimes the most important truths are the ones hidden in plain sight. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. There are always more hearts and histories waiting to be discovered. See you in the next story.